afternoon. How is everybody today?
Good.
So, Perry Memorial is proud to be a sponsor for today's event. We offer healthy care for all ages at Perry Memorial Hospital. I was so glad to be sitting at the table with Monika and Jeff. I have a little story. Back in 2005, I actually got to meet them upon one of their first months in the area. And we sat and we talked, and I looked at her and I said, both of them, I said, a couple from California to the Midwest, why? They said, well, it was the right place, the right time, and the right price. So they were enthusiastic and they were very passionate about growing their business at Chestnut Street Inn, which was quite engaging, and they've done a wonderful job. So I remember the chocolate walks at the inn that they first started. They offered cooking classes and still do. Then we also, she made her way through the Hy-Vee cooking classes, and on the back of the Hy-Vee truck, I saw one 2 months ago. Just so you know, you still haven't seen one. She makes regular appearances on Paula Sands in the Quad Cities, and recently she's won several chef competitions, but in 2017, she won the bedandbreakfast.com breakfast category with her Elvis toast with bacon. So she's quite accomplished. A recent review on her review page on TripAdvisor says, Chestnut Street Inn stands on its own since you need to go nowhere else for your meals, which achieved their goal of offering a comfortable stay along with the food to accomplish a whole overnight accommodation. The one thing that stands out to me about Monika is that from one marketer to another, she's a great marketer. I went and Googled her, I Binged her. She owns the first 6 to 7 pages on multiple fronts. Chestnut Street Inn, Monika Sudakov, bed and breakfast in our area. She does a fabulous job of marketing. She's on Pinterest. She's Googled her website. It's amazing what she does, so kudos to that. So 13 years later, from 2005, here's my special take on Monika and what she's brought to our community and to us personally. I've admired her from afar on her Facebook post. I am a follower of both her personal and her business page. Monika has an open heart and a spirited soul. She has shared openly her life journey. She is an inspiration, providing women encouragement to embrace their individuality and to be who they are. Monika Sudakov, a ballet dancer, a business owner, an innkeeper, a chef, a writer, and an artist who turns the world on with her smile. Monika.
She's gonna make me cry. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. When I got the call asking me to be the keynote speaker, I was pleasantly surprised and excited to have the opportunity to speak to a group of amazing women and men, not to leave them out. I was also intimidated because I wanted to be sure I had something impactful to say to you. Hopefully you will walk away today feeling both enlightened and empowered. The word distinction in the dictionary is defined as excellence that sets someone or something apart from others. Everyone being honored here today has done that, and that's something to be proud of. As I pondered this definition, I began extrapolating on the idea of what it means to be a woman of distinction. What attributes in my mind set some women apart from others? That was a much more interesting distinction, particularly in a society where masculinity and patriarchy often try to limit what women can aspire to and accomplish. So my definition of a woman of distinction is a woman who, despite all odds, has been able to make a mark on this world and on the lives of others and who has done so by overcoming all the obstacles that society has placed in her way. That is what makes each and every one of you even more distinctive. In my own career as a chef, I am no stranger to being a fish out of water, an outsider, an oddity. While homemaking has often fallen to women, being a professional chef has very much historically been a man's world. Breaking into it, being successful in it, and commanding respect is extremely difficult for women in this industry. I was fortunate that my business plan was unique and enabled me to forge my own path within this industry. I've also been blessed to have received critical acclaim and most of all the positive feedback from our guests, which has fueled me to stay the course for over 13 years, despite numerous occasions in professional settings where arrogant male chefs tried to make me feel less than or inferior to them. It takes real courage to be a woman surrounded by insecure men, and I pride myself on having the confidence, creativity, and persistence to not cave from the pressure of the status quo. On a more personal note, and I have to credit my husband for not buying into the stereotypes of toxic masculinity, I have been married to my best friend and the love of my life for 20 years, which in today's day and age is quite an accomplishment, especially when you work 24/7 together. I credit the strength of our relationship to the fact that we have always viewed one another as equals. Both of us are entitled to our own opinions, values, interests, and we encourage one another to express these with fervor and a strong, steady voice. My husband has never once failed to ask me for my opinion on something. We make decisions jointly, and he values my feedback and encourages me to be independent. He is also my greatest champion in my ongoing advocacy efforts and achievements. While I don't want to make this a political discussion because that isn't the point of my message, I would define both my husband and myself as feminists, not in the bra-burning, man-hating way, but in the actual definition of the words, which simply means equality of the sexes. In our case, that may present itself in him being the one who enjoys clothes shopping and fashion, while I'd rather spend as little time getting ready as possible, hence my short hair. It also shows up when he cries at films like Steel Magnolias and I don't.
Every time.
Yes, every time. The point is, stereotypes are not for us. We prefer to buck stereotypes and be true to our inner selves, which may or may not fit cultural norms, and that's just fine with us. This brings me to the advocacy portion of my speech. As I mentioned, my husband has been my greatest champion and supporter in this, and I'll be completely transparent with you today as to where my passion for advocacy lies, which is fueled by my own Me Too story. And that's what I'm going to speak to next. I'm choosing this subject because the time has come for women in particular to stop pretending we are immune to sexual objectification and exploitation. Each and every one of us has experienced this to a greater or lesser degree, and we need to shed light on how pervasive it is in our culture. At this point, I would like to say that some of what I may say may be triggering for those who have had an abuse or assault history. So if you don't think you can sit through this, please take care of yourself and look out for your own well-being. I don't want to trigger anyone, as I know what it's like to be triggered. So I'll give anybody a moment to... All right, they're all in. Okay. So, my other reason for telling you my story is because from the outside looking in, I may look like I have it all figured out. Great job, great marriage, happy life. But behind each and every one of us, there's a story to be told of overcoming some kind of adversity. These shape us and drive us. They make us who we are. They are important aspects of how we have gotten to where we are, and it's crucial for us to honor them and to not be ashamed of them or to hide them. They are integral to making us distinct. Nobody is distinct without some kind of fight. My story is unfortunately not unique. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18. This is likely a conservative estimate since many children never report abuse, even as grown-ups. Just to put that into perspective, assuming there are 200 women present here today, which is women and men, but work with me here. According to this statistic, 67 of us have experienced sexual abuse of some kind, and before we were unable to consent. So if you look to your left and look to your right, that means one of you. And I want you to think about that, because that's really a profound thing. Abuse doesn't care about politics, religion, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomics, or anything else. And it mostly happens within the home and at the hands of someone the individual knows. Stranger danger is a cute catchphrase, but 98% of abuse and assault happens from someone you know. In my case, I was actually abused by two people, my step-grandfather and a much older childhood friend. I have spent the last 3 years piecing together memories that I had thought I had repressed forever. When I had several stressful things happen in my life, I landed in a therapist's office, and all of a sudden, things came crashing down. Panic attacks, anxiety, depression, flashbacks, somatic memories, nightmares, insomnia, all the hallmarks of PTSD. I had no idea what was happening, and it was terrifying. I was also always the perfectionist and the Energizer Bunny, the one who everybody thought had her stuff together. All of a sudden, I couldn't keep that mask on anymore, and it felt like my life was spiraling out of control. It took finding a capable therapist who I came to trust to finally allow all of those memories to come flooding back to me. And I'm gonna cry because I love her, so there's that. It was both an awful and liberating at the same time. Before I tell my story, I want to say that I'm going to be brutally and perhaps painfully honest about what happened to me. Far too many people are afraid to tell their story because it makes people uncomfortable and shut down. There's nothing comfortable or easy about abuse. It should make everybody cringe and be angry that any adult would do something that heinous to a child. Sugarcoating the truth does only one thing. It shields the abuser from having their offenses revealed. Being heard and believed is the single most healing thing that can happen for a survivor, and it's important that they all have the opportunity to put the shame where it belongs, squarely on the perpetrator. So without further ado, here's my story. To the best of my knowledge, my abuse began around the age of 5 when my step-grandfather took me to a swimming pool. I didn't swim yet, so he was trying to teach me to float on my back. It didn't resonate as odd that his hand accidentally slipped under my blue bathing suit between my legs. I thought maybe it was an accident. As I got older and began to mature physically, which in my case began very early, around the age of 8 or 9, things progressed. Kids at school teased me and called me Dolly Parton, while at home, my step-grandfather would pinch my mosquito bites and tease me in front of my whole family, who all thought this was cute. I was mortified. During this time, I became friends with a 14-year-old girl. Based upon what I know now, I believe she was being abused by her own father and didn't recognize that what she was doing was wrong, but nevertheless, she would touch me inappropriately and make me do sexual things with her during sleepovers. I was always perplexed that all the televisions in her house had Playboy Channel on all day, every day. I decided after one particularly traumatic sleepover that I don't want to be her friend anymore. To this day, I can't eat clam chowder because the smell of it triggers a sensory memory of that day. Soon after this, things began progressing with my step-grandfather. He would lure me into the bathroom with him while my grandmother was preoccupied with cooking and cleaning. It started with basics, touching my private parts, French kissing me, etc. I was always told that this was our secret and not to tell my mom or grandmother because I would make them upset, and I never wanted to upset them. So I remained silent and did what I was told. He was a huge man, over 6 feet tall and almost 300 pounds. He terrified me. He also knew I was obsessed with Madonna at the time, and in typical fashion for pedophiles, he used this information to groom me by giving me gifts. Grooming, for those of you who don't know, is a term used to describe the ways in which sexual predators slowly gain the trust of their victims. It can also refer to the ways in which society itself and other caregivers can set a child up to become a victim of abuse. The preponderance of graphic pornography objectifying women and children is an example of something that sets the stage for abuse to occur. Another example can be a parent who is covertly incestuous. meaning they rely on their child to fulfill adult needs, like that of a spouse or friend, or who parentifies a child, placing far too much adult responsibility upon the child that he or she isn't ready to handle. This is what happened to me. My parents divorced when I was 3. After that, my mother looked to me to become her best friend, partner, and caretaker of her emotional needs. She was explicit with sexual talk, including her own sexual interactions, and she constantly commented on my body, saying things like, "It's her right to see me naked because I came out of her body," and encouraging me to wear short skirts to show off my beautiful legs and low-cut blouses to show off my pretty boobs so men would find me attractive. I felt like I had to take care of her at the expense of being taken care of at myself, and I felt like my only value in life was to be sexy to men. In hindsight, I felt like I was a prostitute and my mother was the pimp, which made the abuse even more confusing to me, since in some ways it felt flattering, since I was fulfilling the obligation I thought I had as a female in this society, even though I was just a little girl and could not consent. Anyhow, one fateful day in September of 1985, when I was 9 years old, he told me he had something very special for me. It was a magazine of Madonna, which I'd love, but first I had to come into the bathroom with him. As he locked the door behind him, he proceeded to pull out a Playboy magazine with Madonna on the cover. I didn't even know what Playboy was, so I excitedly began flipping through the pages. One after another, naked women were splayed across the pages. When we finally got to the Madonna centerfold, all of a sudden my idol was sitting there in front of me, spread eagle. I was confused, mortified, disgusted, and scared. My first thought in my innocent child's mind was, how come the hair on her head is blonde, but the hair between her legs is black? As I stood there frozen, I could feel something poking me in the back. When my step-grandfather turned around, I discovered him fully erect. What happened next was one of the worst memories of my life. He proceeded to try to force me to perform oral sex on him, but I fought against him, pressing my mouth shut, trying not to breathe, but it was too late. After struggling for I don't know how long, he gave up trying and simply grabbed my hand and used it to pleasure himself. Once he was done, he matter-of-factly pulled up his pants, told me I was an ungrateful little bitch, and left me there. I felt alone, frozen, mortified, and dirty. The abuse went on and progressed for a while until my grandmother walked in on us one day. I think I was about 12. He got yelled at and kicked out. I thought I was finally safe until he showed up at our door next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, to retrieve his laundry and to pick up some food. Apparently he paid my grandmother to do that, and she said she needed the money. The fact that he had abused me for years was apparently irrelevant. Each time he came, I hid, terrified he'd find me. I hid in my closet behind my Barbie McDonald's, holding my breath and staying perfectly still so he couldn't find me. Nobody ever brought it up again. There was no discussion about what happened, no charges filed against him, nobody in my family was told about it, and nobody gave me any kind of support or therapy. I was told by my mother and grandmother that it was normal and it happened to all girls in the old country. So I assumed I was overreacting and it was somehow my fault. The only thing I could do was to pretend that it never happened. I threw myself into school, ballet, everything I could. I had to get straight A's, I had to be the best dancer, I had to be perfect so that I would be enough. This manifested itself into a full-blown eating disorder, which went mostly unnoticed and which was sadly encouraged by the ballet world and by my mother's fixation upon being beautiful so I can get a man. This is something I've struggled with on and off to this day. I felt useless, ugly, damaged, and broken, but I didn't know what to do about it. So I hid behind the facade of my accomplishments and just moved forward. I went to college, graduated with 2 degrees, magna cum laude, got married, got a master's degree, started my own business, and tried to make myself feel worthy of my existence in this world. I maintained this pace until I couldn't do it anymore. It just wasn't working anymore. I'm 3 years into therapy, and I can finally say that none of this was my fault. I was a victim. I was taken advantage of by a sick individual, and my family failed to protect me or help me. Coming to this realization hasn't been easy by any stretch of the imagination. Just the sheer fact that I can stand in front of you all today and tell you my story in such detail is a miracle. There was a time that I couldn't even verbalize it to my therapist without dissolving into the couch in a pool of shame, pulling my hoodie over my entire face so I could hide from being seen. I just wanted to disappear into nothingness. It took me until about 9 months ago to speak explicitly and say the actual names of the body parts without feeling shame or physically ill. Healing has involved bucketfuls of tears, years of intense nightmares, intense body memories where it feels like the abuse is happening in the moment, debilitating panic attacks in the middle of serving dinner where I can't breathe and I feel like I'm having a heart attack, hours and hours of therapy, including work with a therapist specializing in EMDR, which is a specific modality intended to help with PTSD. I'm not going to go into that because it's very complicated, but it has been very helpful. Trial and error with countless medications, many of which had debilitating side effects like brain zaps that made me feel like my head was being electrocuted. Copious journal writing to process my memories, allowing myself to feel all the painful feelings I had repressed for so long, grieving the loss of the childhood I never got, trust and abandonment issues with friends and even my therapists, tons of inner child work, intimacy issues, art therapy, and much, much more. It's not an easy process. It takes a lot of time and energy, and while I've made huge progress, I'm by no means healed. It's the most difficult, life-consuming work you will ever engage in, but it has been worth every painful moment. And while I'm the one that did the work, nobody heals in a vacuum. Without my amazing husband, family, and 2 incredible therapists, I could never have come as far as I have. So thank you to them. Today I'm strong enough to be a voice for others like me who may not be able to express what happened to them. I've worked hard at healing, and part of my healing journey has been to find a way to not only support others on their healing journey, but to try to be a voice for children and others who cannot advocate for themselves, like women and men who have been sexually assaulted, and lately greyhounds, which became the muse for my art, and which I have published a book of and have exhibited on a number of occasions and hope to continue to do so. Children are born helpless. It's up to parents and other caregivers to not only protect children from predators by knowing what to look for, but also to educate kids about body safety and their own anatomy. If there's anything I'd like to accomplish today, it is to encourage all of you to help advocate for the children in your lives. Teach them what parts of their body are private. Make sure they know the actual names of these body parts. Tell them if anybody ever touches them there, they can tell you, and you will believe them, and help them, and protect them. Teach them about consent, and about respect for their own and the bodies of others. All of this can be done in an age-appropriate manner, and there are many online resources to assist with how to do this at home. And finally, if you are one of the 67 who have experienced child sexual abuse and have lived with the pain of that without any help or support, I implore you to seek professional help. It's never too late. You deserve a life where you no longer feel like you are worthless, bad, and unlovable. You deserve to be heard and believed. You deserve to heal. You deserve to be loved. Thank you for listening. If I have helped just one person in this room decide to reach out for help or to talk to their children about body safety, I will consider this speech a success. And most importantly, I encourage each and every one of you to own your stories. Tell them. Be proud of what you have achieved and overcome in spite of them. Share them. You never know who you may inspire or help with your truth. There's no shame in anything you've been through. There's no shame in admitting you need help. And above all, there's no shame in seeking mental health care. It's time for that stigma to be eradicated. If you feel compelled to, take some time to talk to one another about the parts of your story that make you, you. If you are so inclined, I'd love to hear them too. If anyone has any questions or wants to talk with me privately, I'll be around after this for a few minutes and would be happy to talk to you. Be you. Proudly, unapologetically. You are a woman of distinction in spite of the adversities you have overcome. They don't define you, but they have surely made you stronger, and that's something to celebrate. Thank you.
Oh, I'll turn that off.